footnotes, but we're going to go through and talk about this. So, Chapter 5 deals with banks and bank reconciliation. And the first thing that we have to deal with banks is going to be checks. Any of you ever receive a check for your birthday? Right? Get a check at any point? Right? Now, if you needed to get cash for it, what do you do? Go to the bank, what do you have to do? How? How do you cash it? How do you endorse it? Sign it on the back, right? So, let's say Stevie writes me a check. She's like, Mrs. Grassel, here's some money for the stuff I bought. I say, okay. I can't figure out what you would buy for me, Stevie. So Stevie writes me a check for $50. And so I say, okay, I'm going to go to the bank tonight after school and I'm going to cash it because Stevie gave me that check and I'm going to cash it. So I look at the check and I flip it over on the back of it. I endorse it, right? So I sign my name, Katie Grassel. I put it in my pocket. Walk around all day. I pull my keys out of my pocket. And what happens when I pull my keys out of my pocket? Check falls out, right? So then I'm walking around, pull the keys out, check funds out. Caleb walks by, sees that check made payable to Mrs. Grassel for $50, and I signed the back of it. What can he do? He can cash it legally. Ethically, whole different dilemma, but legally, because I signed the back of the check, that means that check is available for anyone to cash. So my suggestion for you is never, ever sign a check until when? When you're at the bank. Okay? Whether or not you're at the drive-through or if you're inside at the bank, once you get there, that's going to be your time to actually sign the back of the check. Now, we're going to learn about today 3 different types of endorsements. Okay? The first endorsement is probably the one that you use all the time, and that's called a blank endorsement, where you just sign your name on the back of it. Okay? So if you sign your name on the back of it, somebody else finds it, they can go ahead and cash it and use it however they would like. Okay, thanks for waiting. So a blank endorsement is the one that allows anyone at any point with the check to cash it. Okay? So anytime you have a check, don't sign your name to the back of it unless you are physically at the bank, and then you don't have to worry about someone else finding it and using it from that perspective. Okay? So our next type of endorsement is going to be a special endorsement. And a special endorsement just means that I am going to transfer ownership of the check from me to somebody else. Okay? So Stevie wrote me that check for $50, but I owed Tetzlaff over here some money too. So instead of me going to the bank, cashing it for $50, and then finding you, what I did is I'll sign the back of it, that I'll transfer ownership from me to you, and then you can go cash it. So I am transferring ownership, and then you just put the 2 different names on there, and then it makes it much easier to go through and transfer ownership. That's oftentimes going to be called a third-party check. Meaning, if he goes to cash it, it's not really made payable to him, but I transferred it over to you, so go there. Not all businesses or banks will cash a third-party check, so you have to be aware how that would work. Okay? Now, the third way that we can endorse a check is probably the one that you've seen the most but haven't seen the most. I know, how can you see it but not see it? So, let's imagine that you're in line at Don's or at Sal's or at Festival at a grocery store, okay? So you're in line and the person in front of you has a big cart full of groceries. You've all been there, right? Okay? So they go to pay and they write out a check. Have you seen that? Okay? So they get the total of the bill. Let's say the total of the bill was $175. So they write out a check for $175. They hand the check over. What does that cashier do with that check? Think about it. Have you ever seen what they do with it? Anyone? Or at Shopko, any place that accepts checks? Everyone uses debit cards now, don't they? Yes, check is considered cash. Does anyone know what the cashier would do with that check? They don't sign it, but they do turn to the cash register And they don't put it in the drawer. They actually put it in a part on the cash register, and it actually pre-prints on the back of the check. It would say deposit to the account of Don's Quality Market Sales Festival, whatever the business is that you're writing the check to. So the cash register, when the cashier goes through and says that the person is paying with a check, the cash register knows not to go forth in the next step of the ringing up the customer until you put in a check, that it will pre-print the endorsement on the back of it. Then there's usually a slot on the very front of the cash drawer that's actually open. It doesn't pop open. They can just slide the check right into there. And the reason being is that business wants to know that the minute that they accept a check from the customer, they want it endorsed so it can only be deposited to that business's account. Okay? In our happy, simple accounting land, we are not going to be dealing very much with ATM or debit payments, but ATM or debit payments would be held exactly the same way as cash. Most businesses are actually not accepting checks anymore. Does anyone know why? They bounce. What does bounce mean? I agree. Not have money in the account, okay? So Lincoln comes in to my business and he wants to buy some stuff and he writes a check for $80. Do I know that he has $80? No. So if he pays with a debit card or credit card, will I know if he has $80? Yes, because I go through and swipe it, and then they would say whether or not the card is accepted or declined, right? So you don't have that with a check. Some businesses then go through and say, we're not going to take the risk of going through and accepting checks because we're going to have bounce checks. So they'll say we won't accept them, we'll only do cash or debit or credit cards. But then the businesses lose out a little bit money because in order to accept debit or credit cards, they actually have debit or credit card fees associated with it, which is why in the Thunder Zone we don't accept debit card payments for anything less than $5 because there are fees that are associated. Now, have you ever been to someplace else where they have that sign up saying that debit or credit card payments cannot be made for any amounts less than X or Y? 15? Okay. The same reason, because they have fees associated with it. And some credit cards actually have higher fees than others. When you take a look at that's the one I was going to say. I'm stuck on what the name. American Express has one of the highest fees. So what does that mean? So let's say that you and I go to the store, we both charge $25. I have an American Express card. That business would only get, like, for example, $21 from me. You pay with Visa, and they would get $24. So more fees taken out. That's why they go through different businesses, accept different types of cards. Diners, clubs, and different ones have different fees associated with them. So businesses are now going through and doing things differently. I went to a craft fair this weekend at the Navarino Wildlife Center. And all of these craft vendors, some of them accept Square, just like we do at the Thunder Zone. Why are they doing that? What's that? Not everyone carries around cash. Would you agree? Less people carry around cash. Okay. Then if you go to the craft fair and they see something and they don't accept those types of payments, they're losing out on that. So they have to sometimes actually mark up the cost of their goods in order to offset the cost of the fees associated with it. Square is a relatively easy one for small businesses to run and to use compared to other ones. So we have endorsements that we're going to take a look at here, and then we're going to go through and we're going to look at checks. I want to talk about checks before we fill them in. Because when we do checks in our happy accounting land, we're going to do checks that look like this. So on the left-hand side, this is called your check stub. And this on the right-hand side is going to be actually your check. Now, most people, if you're not a business, when they go through and do checks, individuals I don't see using check stubs. I see businesses using check stubs. Individuals would have carbonless copies, meaning if I write on a check, it kind of makes a copy of one below of what you wrote on. Has anyone seen that before? Okay. Basically, it is your proof of what you wrote the check out for, so you don't have to go back and write it in another spot. When we fill out a check, we're always going to fill out our check stub first and then fill out our check. This is our running balance to tell us how much money we have in our account. So we would always start at the top and we would always work our way down. Now, if we take a look over here on the right for this check, you can see that this is going to be check stub number, or check number 78, and this is going to be your bank ABA number. This is going to be the name of the account, who we're paying to, the amount that we write in numbers, the amount that we write in words, the for part, and the signature. Anyone know why we have to write a check amount in words and in numbers? Misread? Can't add stuff in. So if I put a check right here for $10, I would do 10.00, right? Would it be really easy to put another couple of zeros in there and make it 1,000? Right? That would be easy to do in the numbers. Is it easy to change $10 to $1,000? In words, it's not. So that is why checks always have it written two ways, numbers and in words, so that way it can verify and no one could go through and modify how much the check was going to be written for. Okay? So we always, in our happy accounting land, want to make sure we fill out the for part, because that helps us to keep track of how we're going to record those transactions. It is also very helpful for you as well, for a personal budget-wise, if you're writing out checks, to keep track of how the money is being spent. Ready to try some? Let's do this. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do our endorsements. So our instructions read, for each one of the three situations, prepare an appropriate endorsement. So number one, we're going to write a blank endorsement. Number B, we're going to do, a special endorsement to transfer to Kelsey. And C is a restrictive. So this one is going to be A. So basically, we have been authorized to sign checks. And there's no way Applia would know everyone's name in the whole entire world. So what they do for an endorsement is you're actually going to go ahead and just put in signature. So ideally, on a piece of paper, you would sign your name. After we do that one, that's the blank one. That's the one that is the most risky, because we're going to go through and anyone could go ahead and cash that and cause some problems. Now, our special endorsement is where we transfer ownership. And when we transfer ownership, we have to still sign our name because the check was originally issued to me, and then we have to transfer to the person that we're giving ownership to. So we're going to do pay to the order of, and then who do we want to have ownership of it now? Kelsey. So we're going to put in Kelsey's name, and then we still have to sign it, so below that we would actually sign our name. Now the third one is the example of when you go to a business and they have to go ahead and put it into the cash register, or some businesses will actually have stamps, a pre-made stamp, and we're going to go through and we're going to record the back of the check that the only way that this check can be deposited or cashed is if the money goes into a specific account. So we're going to say for deposit only to the account of, and then we're putting it into Balsam Lake Accounting, and then we're signing our name. Now, anytime my husband has me sign checks that we're going to deposit into our account, I always sign on the back of the check, because he goes to the bank separate with my accounts and I'm not with him. I always write on the back of my checks, deposit to the account of, and then I sign my name. So if if I drop the check, my husband drops the check, the only thing that can happen to that check is to be deposited into my account, even though my signature is on it. So 3 different types of endorsements: blank, special, and restrictive. Now, we're going to go through, instruction number 2 says, record the balance brought forward on check stub number 78 of $1,805.75. So our check stub right here, we have a spot where we're going to keep a running balance of what's happening to our account of cash. So our balance brought forward is going to be from check stub number 77 is $1,805.75. The next piece of information, it says instruction number 3, record a deposit of $489 made on October 30th of the current year on check stub number 78. So our check stub is always going to be our running balance of what we have in our account. So anytime we have fees, we have deposits, all of that is going to be recorded down here on the stub in this balance area. So it told us that we had a deposit made on October 30th, so I'm going to go ahead and do 10/30 and of the current year, and I'm putting in a deposit of $489. Now, I had a balance of $1,805.75 and I deposited it. So if I deposited it, is the amount of my account going up or down? Up. So I have to take $1,805 plus my $489. Anyone have that number for me? Mathematically adding those two together? Thank you, I agree. So all I did is I added those two together. Notice, have we talked about the actual check that we've written out at all? No. I use my check stub, kind of similar how your parents might use their check register to know what the balance is in my account. All right. My next instruction, number 4, tells me, prepare the check stubs and write the following checks. Use October 30th of the current year. Check number 78, we're making payable to the corner garage for repairs for $162. Fill out our stub first. On the very top of our check stub, right here is a $sign. We put in the amount of the check with numbers, $162. Continuing down on my check stub, on October 30th, we're going to write out a check to the corner garage for repairs. I still need to finish my check stub. Did they tell us anything about anything other fees or amounts taken out of my check stub? No. So I'm not going to have anything in the other column. So I'm going to take this $2,294.75 and carry it down to my subtotal. Now right here it says amount of this check, which is the amount that we have up here. So I'm going to put the amount of this check in numbers, 162. So my subtotal of $2,294.75, I need to subtract the amount of this check of $162. So if I subtract 162 from there, who's got that number for me? Yes, I agree. Now, you're not done. Take that number, 2132.75, and that goes on check stub number 79 and the balance brought forward. Now, this is where in accounting, if you made a math mistake on the subtotal up there, every spot on your check stub is going to be wrong after that because you did a math mistake. Slow down and do the numbers twice. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, that is how you fill out the check stub, and you always do this stub first before you fill out the check. Now I'm going to go ahead and fill out the check. On the right-hand side, I'm going to start with the date, which is October 30th. It's going to be made payable to the corner garage for $162. Now, one of the things that I can't demonstrate on Applia, but it is very important if you were filling out a check, you can see where I wrote $162 and no over 100. It's always important. You can either do no or I do 00 over 100. Between where your word ends and this word dollars, we can't do it in Applia, but I always make sure that I take and I do a line between the two. I never leave it blank, because what happens if I leave it blank? you can write additional stuff in there, and you always want to make sure you use up that space, okay? Now, the for part is going to go in the lower left-hand corner, and what is this for? Repairs. And then you are authorized to sign it because Balsam Lake Accounting hired you. Way to go. I know. You all have a very unique signature, don't you? Okay, so now we're going to do check number 79 to St. Croix Supply for supplies for $92. So we're going to start on the left-hand side, do our check stub first. 92, date of October 30th. It's going to St. Croix Supply for supplies. Did they tell us anything about a deposit on check stub number 79? Do we have any deposits? No. So I'm going to take that $2,132.75 and carry it down. Do we have any other information for that check stub? This section right here, other? Nothing. So I'm going to do $2,132.75. Now think about it. If I made a math mistake up here, each one of these numbers would now be marked wrong. Slow down. Double check your math. Now, the amount of this check is $92. So now we need to take $2,132.75 and subtract 92. And when I do that, I get $2,040.75. Anyone agree with my math? I did okay today? All right, nice. Check stub filled out. Now I go to the check. October 30th, St. Croix Supply, $92. This is where I don't like how Applia works because you just have to click on it and figure out like, oh, what am I supposed to put here? Oh, what am I supposed to put there? You don't really have to think very much. I don't like that. I like it when they make you think. Go ahead and try the on your own, please.